Chapter 23 deals with first aorist active and middle indicative. A reminder, first aorist, like second aorist and imperfect, are the past time, generally speaking, verbal tense forms. In English we have the ed suffix, Greek a prefix attached to the stem, the imperfect, past continuous, and the aorist, normally past but an undefined aspect. The imperfect is that continuous, ongoing action. The aorist is undefined. It just happened. The speaker or author wants us to just know that something happened, and normally this is in the past. Again, the tense forms offer specificity of meaning for a particular word. The present, a continuous aspect. The speaker or writer wishes us to understand this going on in a continuous time. The imperfect, past time but continuous in its aspect or his view of it. Future, a point in the future, something is happening, it's future time. It's the most highly temporal of the tense forms in Greek. The aorist is the least temporal. It normally is in the past, but its most significant nuance is an undefined aspect. It just happened. And we'll talk more about perfect in the coming chapters. Again, 6 tense form listings in the lexicon. The lexical form is the present active indicative, 5 that follow as Mounce lists them in his lexicon, and this is very helpful for us. The future active middle, the aorist active, perfect middle passive, and aorist passive. You are familiar with the master personal ending chart. I'll continue to show it. Once you have this down, you will be able to note, oh, okay, I recognize this as a first singular, and there's no augment, so it's a primary tense form. I'm immediately thinking present tense form. If there's an augment and it has men as the ending, I'm thinking active voice, secondary tense form. I can see that, and I'm immediately thinking aorist or imperfect, and then I can look at the stem and notice if it is a present tense stem, then it's going to be an imperfect form. If it's an aorist stem, it's either first or second aorist, and we'll begin to distinguish those right now. We noticed in the second aorist, what distinguishes the second aorist from the imperfect is the tense stem. The imperfect uses the present tense stem. The second aorist uses the aorist tense stem. Well, what distinguishes the first aorist from the second aorist? And you see it here. It's the tense formative sigma alpha. There's no connecting vowel in the first aorist. The second aorist has a connecting vowel, but not here. It's replaced by this tense formative, saw, elusamen, here in the example. So you see in the paradigm, there's a tense formative where we would often think of a connecting vowel. You can notice the pattern of secondary personal endings, very regular, new, though it sometimes disappears, and that's the case here with elusa, first singular, elusa, second singular, elusin, third singular, first plural, elusamen, elusate, elusan. One of the issues that comes up with the sigma alpha tense formative is that at times the actual aorist stem will end in a labial, velar, or dental. And if that meets the tense formative sigma, then we do have the square of stops involved. There's a conflation, and a psi will result from an aorist stem ending in p, beta, or phi. So it'll be psi plus the alpha, xi plus the alpha, or the sigma will drop off. One other issue that arises with the first aorist tense stem, if it ends in a liquid, a lambda, mu, nu, or rho, the sigma goes away entirely, and the tense formative is just alpha. So if the stem ends in a labial, velar, or dental, it conflates with the sigma according to the square of stops. If it ends in a lambda, mu, nu, or rho, if it's a liquid, then the sigma drops out altogether, and alpha is the tense formative. And here's the paradigm for the liquid aorist active indicative. Again, very regular. Let's think about the middle components of the first aorist middle indicative. The augment. The aorist active tense stem, even though it's middle and uses middle or passive endings, it's still the active tense stem, and we'll talk about that. The tense formative sigma alpha yet, and in the secondary middle or passive personal endings. We'll talk more about the aorist passives soon, but for now just make sure that you know that the aorist middle uses the active tense stem. The aorist passive you're able to distinguish it by a couple of things, and we'll talk about that in due time here. So should say first aorist here, I apologize, paradigm of the first aorist middle indicative, sigma alpha. The second singular here is worth talking about for just a moment. If you have the tense formative sigma alpha and the personal ending sigma omicron, the personal ending sigma drops out. The alpha and the omega contract, the alpha and the omicron contract to have omega. That's how you get eluso. Then these others are pretty regular through the paradigm. The full master verb chart. This will continue to grow. Notice the tense formative column now with the sigma and the future and the sigma alpha and the alpha. And then there are no connecting vowels for the first aorist active, the liquid aorist active, and the first aorist middle. A couple of thoughts on vocab here. Op erchomai, erchomai. That means I go or come. Apa often has a nuance about it of spatial departing or going away. Apa, it just has that sense about it as a preposition. Op erchomai, I depart. Archomai, archaic, I begin. Grapho, pretty easy there, graph, I write. Again, be creative, nuance these, make them your own. Draw pictures, have word pictures in your minds, words that connect one with another, and that will be especially helpful for you. Well, that's first aorist, again distinguished from second aorist by the tense formative, sigma alpha. See that sigma alpha, you're thinking often first aorist.